The decision sent shockwaves, igniting a fervent debate across the United States about fairness, inclusion, and the very definition of competitive sport. On June 30, 2026, the United States Supreme Court delivered a landmark 6-3 ruling, upholding state laws that restrict transgender athletes from participating in women's and girls' public school sports. This verdict, issued on the final day of the court's term, did far more than resolve two specific cases. It codified a contentious interpretation of civil rights and athletic equity, impacting countless young lives and setting a powerful precedent for future legislation. The ramifications of this decision would reverberate through communities, legal circles, and locker rooms nationwide. The legal journey to this Supreme Court decision began years earlier, rooted in pioneering legislation. In 2020, Idaho became the first U.S. state to enact a comprehensive ban on transgender athletes in women's sports. Republican Governor Brad Little signed the Fairness in Women's Sports Act into law, mandating that athletic participation be determined by biological sex. This move was a direct response to a burgeoning national conversation, with proponents arguing it was necessary to protect competitive opportunities for cisgender women and girls. Idaho's bold legislative action would soon become a blueprint for similar measures across the country, setting the stage for an inevitable legal showdown. Among the first to challenge Idaho's new law was Lindsay Hecox, a transgender college student. Hecox, an aspiring athlete, sought to try out for the Boise State University varsity women's track team, but the Fairness in Women's Sports Act explicitly barred her participation. Believing the law violated her fundamental rights, Hecox, alongside legal advocates from the ACLU and Legal Voice, filed a lawsuit against the state of Idaho. Her case, Little v. Hecox, argued that the ban was discriminatory and unconstitutional, setting up a critical early test for these emerging state-level restrictions and drawing national attention to the personal stakes involved. Across the country, another pivotal case emerged from West Virginia. Becky Pepper Jackson, known in legal filings as BPJ, was a transgender high school student and a dedicated shot putter. When West Virginia passed its own ban mirroring Idaho's, BPJ found herself excluded from the sport she loved. Represented by attorneys from Lambda Legal and the ACLU's LGBTQ and HIV Rights Project, she launched a legal challenge titled West Virginia v. B.P.J., contending that the state's law violated both the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause and Title IX, the federal law prohibiting sex discrimination in education. These two cases, Hecox's and BPJ's, became the primary vehicles for challenging the bans at the highest court. Initially, the transgender athletes found success in the lower federal courts. In both Idaho and West Virginia, judges issued rulings that blocked the enforcement of these controversial bans, siding with Lindsay Hecox and Becky Pepper Jackson. These decisions provided a temporary reprieve, allowing some transgender athletes to continue participating while the legal processes unfolded. However, the states were determined to defend their laws. Solicitors General for Idaho and West Virginia swiftly appealed these injunctions, pushing their cases up the judicial ladder, ultimately leading them to the highest court in the land, where the fundamental questions of sex, gender, and sports would be definitively addressed. In January 2026, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments for the consolidated cases. The 9 justices listened intently as attorneys for the states argued for the necessity of single-sex sports categories based on biological sex, citing fairness and injury prevention. Plaintiffs' attorneys, including Sasha Buchert of Lambda Legal and Joshua Block of the ACLU, countered that the bans were discriminatory and violated constitutional protections. During the arguments, many of the court's conservative justices expressed skepticism regarding the claims that the bans infringed upon transgender women's constitutional rights, foreshadowing the ideological split that would define the final verdict, and leaving observers to ponder the eventual outcome. The highly anticipated ruling arrived on June 30, 2026. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court upheld the state bans. Justice Brett Kavanaugh authored the majority opinion, which was joined by Chief Justice John Roberts, Justice Clarence Thomas, Justice Samuel Alito, Justice Neil Gorsuch, and Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Kavanaugh's opinion emphasized inherent physical differences between the sexes as a legitimate basis for allowing only biological females to compete on women's and girls' teams, aiming to reduce injury risk and ensure fair competition. Notably, Justice Kavanaugh, who coached his daughter's basketball teams, had a personal connection to the nuances of girls' sports, a detail that resonated with many. Central to the majority's reasoning was its interpretation of Title IX, the landmark civil rights law from 1972. The court concluded that since Title IX explicitly permits sex-segregated athletic teams, states are free to limit team players to their sex assigned at birth. Justice Kavanaugh wrote, "May schools determine eligibility for women's and girls' sports based on biological sex?" The answer is yes. The majority also highlighted the judicial difficulty in determining the effects of the puberty blockers and hormones taken by transgender athletes, and comparing their abilities to those of cisgender athletes, making a categorical approach based on biological sex seem the most pragmatic legal path forward. Justice Sonia Sotomayor penned a powerful dissenting opinion, joined by Justice Elena Kagan and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Sotomayor argued that the majority had overstepped, claiming there were unresolved factual questions that still needed to be fully litigated in the lower courts, and criticized the majority for not giving the plaintiffs a fair and full opportunity to present their case. She contended that the majority opinion unduly limited Title IX's protections, asserting that the law makes room for individuals to live in the gender they choose. It cares not just about sex assigned at birth but also about individuals' ability to match, or not, their gender presentation to their gender identity. Her dissent underscored the deep ideological chasm within the court. The Supreme Court's ruling immediately bolstered similar restrictions across the United States. Following Idaho's lead in 2020, more than 24 other states had passed their own laws prohibiting transgender athletes from women's sports. The court's decision effectively removed the last legal obstacles to enforcing these existing bans and provided a clear pathway for other states considering such legislation. This created a fractured legal landscape, where the rights and opportunities for transgender youth in sports varied significantly depending on their state of residence, solidifying the issue as a defining cultural and legal battleground in America's ongoing discourse about identity and equality. For the LGBTQ+ community, this decision represented a significant setback, marking it as the latest in a series of rulings by the conservative-majority Supreme Court that have narrowed transgender rights. This precedent followed a 2025 ruling that upheld state laws making it illegal for doctors to provide gender-affirming care for minors, signaling a clear trend. The issue of transgender athletes in sports has been a potent political flashpoint, notably amplified during the 2024 Trump presidential campaign, which featured numerous attack ads on the subject. This legal outcome further intensified the broader societal debate, placing it squarely at the forefront of national conversations about civil liberties. Beyond the legal arguments, the case underscored profound human stakes. The scientific research on transgender participation in sports remains limited, with current studies suggesting no overall physical advantage for transgender women over their cisgender peers after medical transition. Yet, the emotional toll on athletes like Lindsay Hecox and Becky Pepper-Jackson, who simply sought to compete, was immense. Even sports icons found themselves divided. Tennis greats Billie Jean King and Martina Navratilova publicly took opposing sides, with NCAA President Charlie Baker stating that transgender athletes accounted for less than 10,500,000 college athletes in 2024. The ruling's impact extends far beyond mere statistics, touching the lives and aspirations of a vulnerable minority. The Supreme Court's decision on transgender athletes was delivered on one of the busiest days of its 2025 to 2026 term. On that same Tuesday, June 30, 2026, the court also issued rulings on other high-profile cases, including upholding birthright citizenship and striking down coordinated campaign spending limits. This confluence of significant verdicts underscored the profound influence of the court's conservative majority on a wide array of American legal and social issues. The final gavel of the term signified not just the end of a judicial cycle, but a pivotal moment in the ongoing struggle for civil rights and equality in the United States, leaving many to ponder the long-term implications of these far-reaching decisions.